What started as a day like any other would soon become the battle of the century, and at the center of it all was a teenager named Lindsey Banks. She was a relatively normal kid with a quiet life, and of course, she was a huge fan of the Infographics show. 3 videos fascinated her in particular, namely the ones concerning 3 terrifying monsters created by Canadian horror artist Trevor Henderson: Siren Head, Cartoon Cat, and Long Horse. She'd become obsessed with the characters and wanted to consume any information about them she could find. Things had gotten so out of hand that it was starting to affect her schooling. As Lindsey sat at the work desk in her bedroom trying to make sense of the algebraic equations laid out on the page in front of her, she found that she just couldn't hold her focus. As the hours dragged on, Lindsey felt herself growing increasingly tired. Before she knew it, she'd fallen asleep on top of her homework. She found herself standing in the courtyard of her high school, enveloped by total darkness. She attended one of the smaller local schools, sitting out on the edge of a vast forest, with practically no civilization around. It was a night of perfect dark, not a single star in the sky. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. Then suddenly she heard it, the rattling of bones, and soon she saw it, a seemingly infinite stretch of bone. The endless parade of vertebrae that the monster-obsessed teen knew could only belong to one creature, the Long Horse. Its countless bony coils hung suspended in the air, defying all laws of physics. The creature's skeletal head bowed out of the sky to meet her, tufts of black hair flowing in the cold breeze. She was frozen, just staring at it as its bones clicked and clattered, like cracking knuckles. Thanks to gaining an expertise in all things Long Horse from her Infographics show viewing habits, she knew this could only mean one thing: something terrible was going to happen soon. But what? The length of the Long Horse's neck and the sound of its clicking bones indicated some approaching tragedy, but the otherwise silent beast didn't have the power to indicate any specifics. Moments later, Lindsey woke up, her algebra homework stuck to her face. She looked at her alarm clock and saw to her horror that it was already past 10 a.m. She was late for school. The details of her strange nightmare were already fading into the ether as she got dressed, grabbed her backpack, and started running to school. Thankfully, the building wasn't far from where she lived, but Lindsey already feared she was in serious trouble. If she only knew the full extent of that trouble. When she approached her school, everything seemed eerily quiet. Maybe it was the grim feeling of last night's visions finally weighing on her, but Lindsey felt deep in the pit of her stomach that something was different today. The first confirmation of this belief came to her when she walked up the steps to the front gate and found that inside the school's main foyer all the lights were off. The inside of the school was almost completely dark, save for the odd rays of light piercing through the half-shuttered windows. Was the place closed? Had she gotten her days mixed up? A quick check of her smartphone revealed that no, it was currently 10:30 a.m. on a Wednesday. Something really was amiss here. She turned on her phone's flashlight and began creeping down the halls, hoping to find some form of normalcy hidden amongst the strangeness. Deep down, Lindsey felt terrified, but tried her best to quell the worst of her assumptions. She just watched too many YouTube videos. Monsters aren't real. There has to be some kind of rational explanation for this. That's when she reached the door of classroom 6C, where she was supposed to be taking Mr. Wither's algebra class at that very moment. However, when she opened the door, she saw that the room was totally empty. That was creepy enough, but what truly caught her attention was the sheen that her surroundings seemed to have under the intense beam of her phone's flashlight. Like everything was covered in a thin film of liquid. It shone red. Blood! The whole classroom was covered in blood. Lindsey's breath caught in her throat. She was so scared that she couldn't even scream. However, as she began backing away from the bloody classroom, she heard a tinny giggling echoing down the hall behind her. Lindsey gulped and turned to face in its direction. Her eyes widened in horror at what she saw. A huge pitch-black figure with skin that seemed to move and undulate like ink. Its long rubbery arms, terminating in grasping white gloves, were stretching out toward her. She recognized that killer smile and huge staring eyes anywhere. It was Cartoon Cat, and he was coming right for her. Pushed on by a sudden intense burst of adrenaline, Lindsey ran in the other direction, out toward the courtyard and away from the cartoon monster chasing her. Had the creature taken her entire school? How was this possible? She knew that Cartoon Cat was an evil monster of pure sadism, but this seemed like a step too far even for him. Still, she didn't have time to consider these questions with the monster still on her tail. She could hear it giggling and its huge bloody teeth chattering right behind her. Lindsey could practically feel its hands extending to grasp her when she finally breached the door out into the courtyard. but she wasn't out of the woods just yet. In fact, she was quite literally in them. As we mentioned earlier, Lindsey's school sat on the edge of an expansive evergreen forest. Perhaps this would be the one place she could escape the rampaging monster that just destroyed her school. Lindsey ran through the tree line and into the forest as the giggling and chattering became distant behind her. She ran, tears streaming down her face, until there was a silence that felt closer to safety than any moment since she'd woken up. But it wasn't long until that silence was broken by something just as horrible crackling out over some old speakers. 9, 18, 1, child, 17, remove, vile. Lindsey would recognize that garbled electronic nonsense anywhere. She turned to see it looming over her, easily 40 feet tall. Its flesh was rotten and mottled. Its limbs were impossibly long and thin. Up above, the creature's megaphone head contained sets of filthy teeth that gnawed and gnashed. It was the one and only Siren Head, standing right next to her. Naturally, she screamed and started running in the other direction. Siren Head darted through the trees after her, its gnarled fingers stretched out and ready to receive its prey. Lindsey kept running, not knowing what else she could do. The only options were to run and hope. And just when she thought it couldn't get any worse, it did. Cartoon Cat, all vicious grins and wriggling limbs, appeared amongst the trees in front of her. Suddenly, Lindsey was trapped between two of the most terrifying monsters in the Henderson-verse, with no way out. With Siren Head advancing toward her from behind and Cartoon Cat charging in from the front, all she could do was fall to her knees and try to prepare herself for whatever unthinkable fate was coming. Siren Head reached down toward her with its terrible hands ready to strike, but Lindsey never felt its hands upon her. She looked up astonished and saw the wriggling arms of Cartoon Cat stretching out and grabbing Siren Head. It wouldn't be denied the prey that it felt it was rightfully owed, and it was willing to fight for it. Immediately, Siren Head lunged toward Cartoon Cat with startling speed, clawing at its inky flesh. Siren Head was quadruple the size of Cartoon Cat, but Cartoon Cat had the edge in terms of intelligence and brutal cunning. As Lindsey cowered and watched in horror, Cartoon Cat's arms ensnared Siren Head, stretching and wrapping around its body like tentacles. In response, Siren Head dug its long fingers into the inky membrane of Cartoon Cat's head. The ferocious pseudo-feline never stopped smiling, not once. Even when Siren Head tore off its head and dropped it to the ground, Cartoon Cat's arms went limp and fell away from Siren Head's body as inert as rope. Siren Head shook the last of them off, victorious, and turned its attention to Lindsey. She began backing away, almost frozen in terror as the creature approached, spitting hateful nonsense from its crackling megaphones. Siren Head could be faster than the human eye could perceive when it wanted to, but when all it had to deal with was one lowly human, it could afford to take its time and savor the fear. Of course, as any animation aficionado will tell you, it takes a little more than a simple decapitation to keep a good cartoon down. While Siren Head was inching toward the terrified Lindsey, Cartoon Cat was rising up and putting its head back on as though it were little more than a hat. Before Siren Head could even realize what was going on, Cartoon Cat leapt onto its back and sunk its teeth into the creature's mottled flesh. The monster screamed out of its speakers, trying to reach behind itself and yank the snarling cartoon monster off its back, but the Cartoon Cat wouldn't let go. It just kept sinking its huge teeth further into the rotted body of Siren Head. It was an unstoppable force going up against an immovable object, both powerful flesh avatars of even greater cosmic nightmares, each with their own terrifying powers. Cartoon Cat, a malleable, shape-shifting sadist that seems immune to all physical damage. Siren Head, a giant, lightning-fast monster that can make short work of everything from families to military squadrons. They wrestled and brawled in the darkness of the forest, Siren Head's claws digging and Cartoon Cat's teeth carving. The one thing Lindsey knew was that regardless of which of these two titans won, neither result would be good for her. That's why, while the monsters fought, she decided to make a final run for it. She turned and sprinted out of the forest, the sounds of deranged cartoon giggling and violent radio static fading into the distance behind her. Eventually, she managed to escape past the tree line and the now empty school and run back to the center of town. Only there would she be safe, though the nightmares of the horror she'd witnessed would stick with her for years to come. Later investigations found the true scope of the tragedy that occurred that day. 400 children disappeared, along with over 60 teachers. No suspects, no witnesses, nothing. Only Lindsey knew the truth, but who could she possibly tell? Her obsession with the monsters dried up after that. Nothing quenches a thirst for horror like encountering the real thing. She never found out what transpired between Cartoon Cat and Siren Head that day. Who won that fight, if either of them did, would remain a mystery. Though there was one factor in all this that Lindsey couldn't quite shake: Longhorse, perhaps the real winner in this whole conflict. It had been him and his warning after all that had saved her life. Check out Siren Head Explained and Cartoon Cat Explained for more information on Trevor Henderson's monster masterpieces. You never know, it might save your life.